Thank you. Thank you very much. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Most around the country, it's known as Taco Tuesday. My name's 12 Gauge. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is my first members only live stream, and I thought I'd start it off tonight with some IDAHO4 stuff. So, I have a pretty good show packed for you guys. So, if you are in the chat currently, maybe you can come back and replay this. So, let's get started. I hope everybody's doing well. I don't know why I'm so nervous. I'm just talking to a screen right now. So, you know how it goes. First time for everything. Kind of getting used to talking to myself once again. I guess I alienated the world from myself, so here we are. Well, let me show you this. I thought this was really cool earlier when I watched this. Um, it's going to go into detail about the movement according to the affidavit and the time frame. So let's watch this.
November 12th, 2022, 9 p.m. Approximately 7 hours before the killings, Zana Kernodle and her boyfriend Ethan Chapin are at the Sigma Chi fraternity house, University of Idaho. It's just a 5-minute walk from Xana's off-campus residence at 1122 King Road, Moscow. Just a few hours later, this house would turn into a crime scene. Meanwhile, the other two victims, Madison Mogan and Kaylee Goncalves, are about 1.5 miles away at a local bar called the Corner Club, located at 202 N Main Street around 10 p.m. At around 1:30 a.m., they both decide to leave the Corner Club and head to a local food vendor called the Grub Truck at 318 South Main Street. They can be seen on a live stream on Twitch run by the food truck around 1:40 a.m. This footage is approximately 2 hours and 20 minutes before the event. After spending about 10 minutes there, they take a ride back home and reach the King Road residence around 1:56 in the morning. Zana and Ethan arrived just a few minutes earlier, around 1:45 a.m. About 10 miles away from the King Road residence, and nearly an hour later, police suspect Brian Koberger was observed on Washington State University surveillance cameras, traveling north on Southeast Nevada Street at 2:44 in the morning, about 1 hour and 15 minutes before the event. His phone stops reporting to the network at 2:47 a.m. Around 6 minutes later, he is seen traveling south towards State Route 270. He is then spotted on the 700 block of Indian Hills Drive in Moscow at approximately 3:26 a.m., nearly 40 minutes before the event. 2 minutes later, he is seen on Steiner Avenue, just a mile away from the King Road residence. 3:29 a.m. Brian Koberger enters the King Road neighborhood, but he does not enter the King Road residence until around 4:04 a.m. Instead, he makes 3 initial passes around the King Road residence and then leaves via Walent.
So, I've heard many a theory, many a story, many a speculation, but I've always held true to this belief that he knew how many people were in that house based on that first time around. There's no way he could have not known. Because you look at the vehicles out front, you're going to count them, you're going to realize, okay, well, there's a lot of vehicles out here, so I got to get in there fast and quick. Maybe that explains the number of times that he circled the house. Not because he was getting up the nerve, but trying to go over in his head what he was going to do if he encountered a bunch of male resistance.
to drive. It's uncertain where he went from this point, but a car similar to the suspect's car is spotted by the mobile gas station camera around 3:45 a.m. Although the police collected footage from the gas station, but there is no mention of such footage in the affidavit released by the authorities. 4 a.m. Back at the King Road residence, just minutes before being killed, Zana Kernodle receives a DoorDash delivery. 4:04 a.m. 4 minutes later,
Okay. The DoorDash thing has always puzzled me. It's puzzled me to the extent of, okay, did they download the DoorDash driver's phone? Did they download his electronic devices? Did they check out his phone number to see if he had pinged anywhere near the house more than once? And if so, did the receipts and orders correspond with him being in that area more than once? The same as they did for Brian.
Brian Koberger enters the King Road neighborhood for the 4th time. He turns east onto Queen Road, but upon failing to park, he turns around and heads west towards the intersection, where he completes a 3-point turn and parks somewhere in this area. Around this time, the suspect enters the King Road residence through a ground-level sliding door on the 2nd floor. He takes the stairs to the 3rd floor, goes down the hall, and checks Kaylee's bedroom, where he finds Kaylee's dog. The surviving roommate, Dylan Mortensen, on the 2nd floor, is awoken by what sounds like Kaylee Goncalves playing with her dog on the 3rd floor. Just a while later, she hears what she thinks is Kaylee Goncalves saying, quote, "There is someone here." Dylan looks out of her room but does not see anything.
Okay. Let's break down that statement for a minute. I've never done this, so I'm going to do it right now. There's someone here. That means that A, Kaylee either heard the person upstairs, or B, she saw them. One or the other. So I was thinking, I've always wondered which room he hit first. I was thinking, what if she encountered him in the hallway and the dog was running around her as they were struggling? And he dragged her into Maddie's room, threw her on her bed, did Maddie first, because she was the quickest, right? And at the same time, somehow incapacitated Kaylee enough. And then she woke up, started fighting back, and succumbed to her injuries in the corner of the bed. But something would have had to incapacitate her, because there's no way that he could have entered that room without Kaylee fighting him and him just having the fresh reign of stabbing Maddie. I don't know. Tell me what you think.
Around this time, the suspect goes to Madison's bedroom and kills her and Kaylee with a knife. 4:12 a.m. At this moment, Zana Kernodle is possibly awake, as her cell phone records show she was using TikTok around the same time. The suspect goes downstairs and enters Zana's bedroom. Around this moment, Dylan Mortensen hears crying coming from Zana Kernodle's room. She also hears a male voice saying something to the effect of, quote, "It's okay. I'm going to help you." Dylan opens her door for the 2nd time but does not see anything.
So she hears Xana crying, right? And then she hears somebody say, "It's okay. I'm here to help you." Okay. At this point, has Ethan already been taken out of the mix? Is that why she's crying? Because that doesn't make sense. As many people have pointed out, he walked in, he stabbed Xana, and then he got confronted by Ethan. He fought around with him, and then fatally stabbed him, and then finished Xana off, and then was off and going. Do you really think Xana had the personality to sit there and watch her boyfriend get stabbed without fighting back? Do you believe she had that capability to just watch this go down, not do anything about it, just watch it happen? I don't.
4:17 a.m. A security camera less than 50 feet away from the west wall of Kernodle's bedroom picks up distorted audio of what sounds like a whimper, followed by a loud thud. Xana and Ethan are most likely killed around this time. Dylan Mortensen opens her bedroom door for the third time, and this time she sees a man dressed in black, wearing a mask, walking towards her. She stands frozen in shock as he walks past her and leaves through the kitchen's sliding window. After seeing this man, she locks herself in her room. She does not recognize the man, but later describes him as tall, around 5'10", not very muscular, and with bushy eyebrows. However, she does not call the police at that time.
So it's common knowledge that he would have been standing off that 6-inch step because that would have made him taller than 5'10", way taller. And she would have described him probably as stepping on the step and really having trouble gauging how tall he really was due to that. These are my thoughts. It's a lot easier to talk without people contradicting everything you say in the chat.
4:20 a.m. The suspect goes back to his car and leaves the crime scene at a high rate of speed via Walenta Drive. But this is not the end of his journey. Approximately 3 hours and 30 minutes after getting back to his residence, Steptoe Village Apartments, Koberger goes to the crime scene again. According to cell phone records, at 9 a.m. on the very same day, Koberger leaves his apartment. 12 minutes later, he is back at the King Road residence. His phone utilizes the cellular resources that provide coverage to the King Road residence for another 9 minutes before he returns to his place at 9:32 a.m. Sometime later in
So at this time, his phone was obviously on. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to have any kind of interaction seeing where his phone was at that time. But once again, those towers in that distance are going to be quite tricky, proving he was there or he was not. I say he was there. All this smoke screen that people are doing sounds good, but in reality, no, they got him.
the morning, the two surviving roommates call friends to the home, thinking that one of their roommates has probably passed out and isn't waking up. Eventually, they call the police, nearly 8 hours after the event. 11:58 a.m. Police respond to the 911 call reporting an unconscious person and soon find the bodies of 4 students stabbed to death. On a bed next to Madison Mogan, police find a leather knife sheath with a single source of DNA. That DNA is run through the law enforcement database, but no matches are found. Investigators then turn to genetic genealogy to acquire a family tree with the help of the FBI. Meanwhile, investigators continue to search for leads. They find a suspicious white Hyundai Elantra caught on camera around the crime scene at the time of the event. On November 25th, police ask other law enforcement agencies to look out for white Hyundai Elantras. 4 days later, on November 29th, Washington State University Police researches any white Elantras registered on the campus and find a 2015 white Elantra registered to Brian Koberger.
And you know, Early on, when my channel was in the infancy stages, I was in a live stream one night, and the individual was a police officer, and he stated, all this stuff that they're talking about, the night sheets, the physical description, all this stuff. He said, you know what's going to get him caught? Everybody was in suspense. He said the car. The car is what's going to get him caught. That's going to seal the deal. Because you can't undo the car being seen. Whether you say it's an 11 to a 13 to a 15 to a 20 to whatever you say, you can't mistake that his car left his apartment at that time before he turned his phone off. Well, how can he account for 2 hours? People have a lot of grandeur imagination on where he was, how it couldn't have been him, and where they got this information and that information and all this stuff. But in reality, they're doing the same thing that they accuse the mainstream media of doing, just in reverse. They're pushing their narrative just as hard. So, I believe the police got the right guy because all this PCA was probable cause to get an arrest. That's all it was. That's all a probable cause affidavit is a story of evidence that you suspect lead to the defendant. And people state, well, the PCA is a lie. The PCA's, they put too much in it. They did that, and the other. Well, they wanted to make sure they got the right guy. And the more information you put, the more chances of you not having to rewrite the thing and getting a judge to sign off on it. So once the PCA was signed off on, the arrest warrant happened. Obviously, they arrested him, extradited him back to Idaho, had the grand jury hearing, indicted him, and here we are. But still, people act like just because he's been in jail for 2 years, miraculously, all the information that they've dug up or they've been able to make sense of in their own mind, that's going to set this man free. Dream on. It sounds good if you're writing a fiction novel, which they contend that Howard Bloom is not a real author. He's just a fiction writer. And I don't defend anyone but myself in what I say. Could I be wrong? Of course. Could I be right? Of course. But I do know the process in which the law works. And it's nowhere near what people theorize happened. The PCA was a joke. There's no way, they threw Dylan under the bus. They did this, that, and the other. How else do you feel that they were going to get an eyewitness statement if the eyewitness wouldn't have provided information? No matter how vague, it gave them a start. It gave them somewhere to look. And people don't believe me, but I keep saying that I'm pretty sure that most of the people at WSU who he had contact with, students, faculty, whoever, They gave him up just as quick or quicker than that IgG was manifested.
30 minutes later, a WSU officer finds a 2015 Elantra at 1630 NE Valley Road. Upon running the plates, he comes up with driver's license information showing Brian Koberger, a 6-foot, 185-pound white male with bushy eyebrows. This description closely matches the description given by the surviving roommate, Dylan Mortensen, who saw him walking past her, leaving the crime scene. Meanwhile, by using genetic genealogy, the FBI comes up with the same suspect, Brian Koberger, a 28-year-old criminology graduate and a PhD student at Washington State University. To test the DNA, police recover trash from Koberger's family in Pennsylvania on December 27th. The very next day, the Idaho State Laboratory identifies a male who cannot be excluded as the father of the person whose DNA was found on the knife sheath.
Okay, so you have somebody that cannot be included as the father of this individual. So how do you explain that? How do you explain that they got the father involved in this whole mess? How would they have set Brian up and then said, okay, we're gonna make it look good because we're gonna get his father's trash and we're gonna say it has to be Brian. Look, this is his father's DNA. There's no way it could be someone else. The thing about conspiracies is they grow and they grow and they grow until they're out of hand.
On December 30th, the day of the arrest, the FBI and Pennsylvania State Police arrest Brian Koberger in Pennsylvania.
And you know the rest of the story. They arrested him, they extradited him. Have you ever asked yourself, why did Mr. Koberger decline a speedy trial? If you're innocent, wouldn't you have wanted a speedy trial to exonerate you from the crime? Isn't that what you would be looking for? I know if I was innocent, there'd be no way I'd be willing to sit in jail 1 hour if I was innocent. No way in hell. But many people feel that this is what happened. That he's okay with that he's okay with sitting in jail this long just to prove his innocence. Does that make sense to you? Because it doesn't make sense to me. But you can't make people see something they're unwilling to see. They don't want to see it. They don't want to hear it. All they want to hear is their perception of what they got right versus what they view everybody else got wrong. Because when it comes to law enforcement and it comes to arrest and indictments, it's pretty simple. It is just that. It is no conspiracy. There are people right now getting arrested and having a PCA written about their crimes. And nowhere are people standing up for their innocence. Maybe their families. Oh, I don't want to forget the family. You know, I was watching this News Nation podcast earlier, watching and listening. And the individual asked the reporter, they asked, has Koberger's family reached out? Did they come to any of the trial or anything like that? It might be on this one that I'm about to play you. I can't remember if it was News Nation or was this one. But nonetheless, the question is asked, what about his family? Have they attended anything? I was reporting that one night, and feverishly people started telling me his family was in another room on Zoom. How they knew that, I have no clue. But that's what I was getting told. How would they know that? And everybody else denied that the family has even made an appearance at any of the court hearings. What does that tell you? Wouldn't you think the family would be out there petitioning for his innocence? Petitioning for investigation to go on just as hard as people are who want to see this man be innocent? If anybody would be at the head of the line, it would be those people. But seeing that you don't hear about that or you don't see anything about that, that kind of leads you to believe that they don't believe in his innocence. Or they might be unsure and they're doing the smart thing and waiting for the trial to decide his innocence or guilt. Because people can't do that. I've said time and time again, I don't care if he's innocent or guilty. But if he did it, I hope he gets the highest extent of the law thrown at him. And that he didn't get off on a technicality. I hope they did take every initiative to do this right the first time. As I hope they do that in every crime, not just this one. Well, let's listen to this podcast. I listened to this earlier. It was quite interesting. So here we go.
At Amazon, Target stores may be charged non-refundable active.
One of the community members told me, Moscow will never be the same again. And when I heard that, it broke my heart.
It's hard not to imagine the victims in their last steps, in their last meals. It's impossible not to be haunted by that.
I'm sitting towards the back, and then I see him walk in, and then we locked eyes.
This is The Idaho Massacre, a production of KT Studios and iHeartRadio. Season 2, Episode 10, Boots on the Ground. I'm Courtney Armstrong, a producer at KT Studios with Stephanie Leidecker and Gabe Castillo. Stephanie and I spoke with veteran journalist Tanya Rashid, who traveled to Moscow and stayed there on and off over the course of 8 months. Tanya has worked for outlets including National Geographic, Vice, and PBS NewsHour. We asked Tanya what drew her to this type of work.
I think part of the reason why I became a journalist has a lot to do with my exposure to extreme worlds. I was born in Saudi Arabia, and then we moved to Salt Lake City. So it's like one isolated place, Saudi Arabia, to Utah, which is like totally polar opposites. So I feel like that has a lot to do with my curiosity for different worlds. For me, it's been a lot about uncovering difficult stories, hard to access stories. And for the past 13 years, somehow organically, my niche has become covering traumatized communities. I've covered famine, genocide, gender-based violence across the world, and tragedy in our own backyard.
Tragedy in our own backyard. I feel like that brings us to, the tragedy in Moscow, Idaho.
When I got there, it was 3 months after, and The community itself was incredibly, just very afraid and not wanting to associate with any media whatsoever. Because after the murders, as you both very well know, there was a lot of press and internet sleuths just taking over this sleepy town. Part of me, when I arrived there, I felt like I was in the 70s, like in a 70s film, because everyone's just very hippie-tastic there. Prior to arriving, I was afraid because Idaho, I'm thinking, being a brown Muslim woman arriving in this community, like how will they receive me? But, Moscow residents are some of the kindest, most wonderful people that I've encountered. And that was surprising to me. But yeah, when I arrived, I could feel the tension on the ground. And so that's like my first observation when I got to the ground, that I really needed to take my time and get to know the people in a very, very sensitive and mindful way.
When you did first touch down in Moscow, can you just describe what was it like? The energy of the community. Did that change or evolve as days went on?
Well, I landed in Spokane and I drove 2 hours in the night. And as I drove, I noticed the rolling hills, the Palouse. And since I was driving at night, it was just kind of eerie. And I had never been to Moscow before. So in my mind, I'm thinking, what am I doing? And I wondered, did the suspected killer drive down these roads? It's just like all these thoughts went through my mind. So that night I had dinner at the Mad Greek where Maddie Mogan and Xana Kernodle had worked. And having dinner there was also a very unsettling and eerie experience. Sure.
Of course, it would have been. I've always wondered what it'd be like to be able to go there and to go into the Mad Greek, to go into the corner club, walk around those streets at that time of night, and to get a feel of what it could have been like leading up to these murders. Because with all the sensationalization and all the dramatization, no, watching an early interview with the Goncalves family, and they were shocked that this happened. Amidst all the stuff that was swirling around, they didn't say, we agree with all the conspiracies. They didn't say any of that. They said it caught them off guard. Like this was a targeted event, and all they did was go out and have a good time, and they were targeted for that. And they said some people were cleared too soon, in their opinion. And Steve said she had a hell of an alibi. I wonder who the she was that he was talking about.
After that, I went to the corner club and I could just feel there was this tension you can cut through with a knife. So I arrived at the corner club, I had a drink, and then I looked down at the table and I see a picture of Maddie, Xana, and Ethan and Kaylee on under the glass table. That one famous photo that's all over the news. And I'm just like, there's something about reading it and another kind of feeling when you're just in the location and looking at their picture real time. I just thought, I'm here, I'm reporting, I just want to go to all the places and see what it's like. So that was my first night. But I will say I was at the murder site quite a few times and there are ring cameras. Neighbors have cameras and I do wonder if the police have taken them in and what
You
they
hear what
might
she just said?
discover.
You bring up neighbors.
She said, and the ring cameras. This was 3 months after, okay? Were these ring cameras put up afterwards? I doubt it. because everybody was gone from that area. People had graduated. She said she wonders if the police had that footage.
I've seen certain people give interviews on the news or et cetera, because look, it was a house amongst many. From what we've been told, it's sort of a dead end street. You would be super intentional if you were going to that particular house, right? It's not on a major road that goes to someplace else.
Yeah, that's accurate. I mean, it took me a few moments to recognize it because the house was boarded up. So the house is hard to spot, but once you're there, the neighbors and people immediately see you and they're not happy for you to be there, and rightfully so. And I wonder if the demolishment of the home had a lot to do with that, this constant reminder.
Whether you're reading about it or hearing about it on a podcast or seeing it on the news, it's very different than when you're actually boots on the ground. And it's hard not to imagine the victims in their last steps and their last meals. It's impossible not to be haunted by that.
Vicarious trauma is real. One of the community members told me, Moscow will never be the same again. And when I heard that, it broke my heart because it's true. This case has totally changed the energy of this town and how people even engage with one another.
Tanya, I'm very interested to get into the fact of what it was like because you were there and attended hearings with the accused, with people we have now only seen on TV.
The town will never be the same. This town is so small that the people took it personal, what they should have. Who would sneak into their community, take out 4 people, and then be gone? You don't think these people want justice just as badly as the families do? This person violated their community. But no, most people on these YouTube streets act like there's only a select few of people who want justice and everybody else is just trying to frame him because he's innocent. Because there's no evidence in the PCA. There is evidence. You just have to open your eyes and look at the evidence that's been given to you. It's not up to you to make the PCA make sense. It's up to you to understand the storyline and what they have the evidence. This is the evidence that they have to arrest, indict, and this is where we're at. The trial is where it matters. All this other BS, all these other talking about cell ping towers and spy cameras and parachuting into the balcony and people flip flopping unities on these streets. They'll be friends with these people for a while and then they'll flip flop and they'll be against them because they don't like their content. That tells you a lot about these people. And here we are, 2 years and something removed, and these people are still asking the same questions. And whenever they ask the question, they always follow it up with, I don't know. Or this is just what I think, or this is just what I heard. Where did you hear it? Because if you're just spreading something you heard somebody else say, that's gossip. That's hearsay. That's not factual evidence. When you dive into this court case and you're actually understanding how the PCA led to him, there's no conspiracy, there's no double PCAs, as many have said. There wasn't 2 PCAs. The one that they showed us was just to shut us up, and the real one is hidden. That one is, under the gag order. No? Come on, man.
Or in still pictures. And I'm reminded of when we were covering the Piketon massacre and We went to several of the trials, and I was there when convicted murderer Jake Wagner was there. And it was so striking to me, just the feel in this courtroom. And there was nobody on the Wagner side. There was nobody on the accused side to support them. Not one person of support, not a family member, a friend, a reverend. Whereas on the victim's side, the victim's family were there, absolutely steadfast and just holding court in the courtroom on their side. So it was a really interesting juxtaposition. What was the feeling like? Can you describe what the hearings were like?
The first hearing I went to was the arraignment. And while I stood outside of the courthouse, I encountered this couple that came in from another country that were on this crime tourism thing. And that was their form of taking a vacation, coming to this arraignment. And, Moscow's a really small town. So the organization of letting reporters, community members all into the courthouse was a bit of I don't want to say a mess, but they have never dealt with anything like this before. There's just this overwhelming amount of international, national news reporters, sleuths, and just everyone, and residents just wanting to see. And I remember I had to put my name on the list. And then I went in, and Koberger arrived in an orange jumpsuit, and Ann Taylor, a couple of police officers, the judge, obviously. And then I look and I see, if I'm not mistaken, the Gonsalves family were at the arraignment, and Shannon Gray, their attorney.
Wait, the arraignment is a big deal too. Is that the first time that Mr. Gonsalves would have seen the accused Brian Koberger in the courtroom face to face?
I would think so.
I think so too.
Then after the charges were read, Brian Koberger's attorney declined to enter a plea and elected to stand silent. That prompted the judge to enter a not guilty plea. This is the interesting thing that I've been reporting on, and I haven't talked about.
Right. In that moment, if you're not guilty, aren't you going to open your mouth and say not guilty? What would that have harmed him to do that? No, but everybody knows better. Everybody knows more than everybody else. So let's overlook that fact. Let's let the judge claim you not being guilty. Any other killer that you've ever studied other than BTK? He did the same thing, so maybe he was copying him once again, because he did the same thing. When asked if he was innocent or guilty, he stayed in silence, so therefore the judge ruled not guilty in his favor. You know what I mean? Maybe just a copycat.
About, and I'm talking about with you, is I walk out, I'm sitting in the hallway, and there's about to be another hearing. I forget what the hearing was. And then I see the Gonsalves family just walk right past me through the hallway, just running. And they're running down the street. And I look outside, I run out too, and I see all these cameras just running behind them, after them. And that was really unsettling to watch. This grieving family coming here, to this hearing, facing this situation, and then this overwhelming presence of intrusion.
You know what else is funny? The same people who say the PCA is garbage and the PCA is worthless and this and that, they're the same people when they're trying to prove a point. They're going into the PCA and pulling out the information that they're calling garbage whenever you're trying to use it for conviction purposes. They're going in there, pulling it out, trying to flip it and make it for their innocent purpose, which is hilarious to me because if it's garbage, stop using it. Come up with your own intellectual evidence for innocence. I've yet to hear anybody give me an intellectual evidence trail that could put this man as innocent, other than anything that they've ever heard other people talk about and speculate. They don't have their own true theory.
Essentially.
I see all sides of that. On the one hand, you have to go and you have to report on it. And it should make us mad as hell that these families have been put through it, right? We want to, again, support and rally around them. And that's the fine line. So now there you are. Obviously, the emotion in the courtroom has to be major. What was it like seeing him for the first time?
I can say seeing him in an orange jumpsuit and his face in real time made it very real. I don't know how to explain that. I'm sure you both relate. Everything just felt almost too real. And yeah, it was a tense moment because the families were there, community leaders, journalists, just everybody just there, focused on this moment. And it went by pretty fast, honestly. The other hearing I went to, which was on June 27th, was interesting because it was the first time I had seen Koberger wearing a suit. I'm sitting towards the back and I see Koberger walk in, suited and booted, hair gelled, just looking very put together. Quite the contrast from when I had seen him last in an orange jumpsuit. I'm sitting towards the back and then I see him walk in and then we locked eyes. It felt like chills went down my spine. I felt gutted in my stomach. Those few seconds felt like a whole 5 minutes, felt much longer than the gaze. And when I looked in his eyes, there was this very blank stare, almost.
Okay, so this person has actually been in the courtroom within the last, I don't know how long when she did this officially, but it's not from grade school, high school, uh, junior high, college, at DeSales. It's none of that. This is recent stuff. At least recent enough that she got a chill from his stare. Come on. And she's a woman. So if he made her that uncomfortable in the courtroom, and she's unbiased at this point, she's just trying to get information, trying to walk the paths of that town, trying to get answers, trying to get information. And she locks eyes with him, and he gives her this type of internal bleh. What does that say?
Like gray, but that's how I would describe it.
Was Brian Koberger's parents or his siblings or any family members present at any of the hearings that you can recall?
No, I didn't see anyone from his family.
Wow. It's a tough one, right? On the one hand, you respect the privacy, they're under a gag order. Going to the courtroom is going to create perhaps more of a frenzy and open the door to more questions. On the other side of that, you would want to show support because by showing up, it is saying loud and clear, we do not believe these charges. Our son or our family member is innocent. And it's a confusing thing. I don't have a personal opinion on it. It's a really big deal to be in a situation where, and Courtney can speak to this as well, and I've been in courtrooms before with convicted killers. In your case, there has been no conviction. He claims his innocence. And I don't think that can be understated. Specifically, Courtney, when she went to Jake Wagner, the accused Pike County murderer's trial, we had been tag teaming. And Court, not to put words in your mouth, but you were visibly upset because you had seemingly locked eyes with Jake Wagner. And I was like, no, wait, what? You locked eyes? He did it. He said he did it. And we know he's capable of murdering 8 people. And we were shook. If you want to share a little bit.
Yeah, just his affect. This is a man who he helped coordinate and helped fuel his family members to murder 8 other people, including the mother of his child, including the grandmother of his child. And as he is telling the details of this, meticulously and slowly, as you do during examination and cross-examination, the callousness, it wasn't even like describing a holiday event. It was more like describing going to the grocery store. Just the lack of feeling, and a lot was made of this in the press, and it really was the truth. He's smirking. He was smirking telling this, and it was deeply unsettling.
She came back, and then I went to George Wagner's trial, and Angela, the mother, who also at that point had taken a plea deal and confessed to plotting the murders of 8 people she knew and knew very well, and was going to now testify against her eldest son, guaranteeing him life in prison. I, like, had to almost look down. I was petrified to lock eyes with her based on Courtney's experience. Did you notice if he, and I'm speaking of the accused now, Brian Koberger, did he have any reaction that you noticed or worth noting at any of the hearings that you were at that maybe we haven't seen ourselves?
He walked in with his suit and tie. Ann Taylor was really well put together herself. Her hair was blow dried and curled, and both of them looked very put together, unlike the previous hearing where he was in an orange jumpsuit. And during the proceedings, she continued to say that her client was not a fishing expedition, and she wanted to see what evidence the prosecution had against her client. So there was a lot of back and forth about that during that particular.
Okay, so that's probably where people got, well, there's no evidence because she claimed that she wanted to see the evidence against her client. So therefore, if the attorney is asking for that evidence, then there must not be any evidence, right? That how it works? You know, it's interesting to me how easily persuaded people are with words. They hear certain things and instantly they are persuaded one way or the other and they don't sway. They're stuck on that. Well, she said that there was no evidence. She didn't know, you know, her client wasn't a fishing expedition.
Hearing, and she said, quote unquote, "We've asked for several things that we still need." So, and those include cell phone investigations and what led the police to seek out a Hyundai like the one driven by Koberger. There was a sense of confidence with Ann Taylor that permeated the room. And I remember going to the bar afterwards, and I would just listen in on people just talking. And they'd say, like, how could you do this? If he like steps foot out of that jail, like he gets shot in the head. I'm surprised he hasn't been shot by now, like one of the residents said. Like it was wild. Also, like this very rural aspect to Idaho residents or Moscow residents. A lot of these men that I've met were doing physical labor, jobs that were very physically demanding, and coming to the bar was just a space to let loose. And the bar is the spot for all of the community folk coming together. There are trivia games, all friends meeting up, college kids. It's just the area where everyone flocks to.
Let's stop here for a break. We'll be back in a moment.
Make this new school year an opportunity for your kids to
Direct injection engine fuel injector.
Who knew the victims or were in their circle and sort of could speak to the before when everything was, quote, normal.
I went to the University of Idaho and contacted their journalism department, and it ended up being this really fascinating, organic experience where I engaged with the student newspaper, the Argonauts, the student journalists who were the first ones on the ground when the murders took place. And I can't begin to tell you how hard it hit them psychologically. And just listening to their stories and how they covered this day by day, no sleep, not eating, just there. Can't begin to imagine what it's like to be a student journalist living through and reporting on such a tragedy, such a travesty. And one of the students was childhood friends with Xana Kernodle. But for him, what was striking to me about him was how personal this is, while also wanting to be a good journalist and tell the story the right way. So I would say that would be my most striking example of getting close to the story and people connected to it. I don't want to paint Moscow as a town that's just, yeah, it's forever changed and this horrible tragedy, these tragic murders took place. But at the same time, I also see the resilience of the community. It's a very strong community. And with the students too, they want to go on with their lives. And so the campus, while there was this somber energy, I would say there was also this, it's a bubbly college town. It's just very nice. It's wonderful, actually.
Was there a sense while you were there during the time of these hearings, did it feel like in the town that, wait, maybe this isn't the guy and like we're still unsafe? Did it seem as though, look, there could still be a killer at large?
And this is the problem with a lot of speculation and a lot of theories, I guess, is that many people just don't believe that they have the right one. But yet they're comfortable enough knowing that if they're proving that he's innocent, I get that he's innocent until proven guilty. I'm not stupid. I get that. But you pushing the innocent card is saying that you believe he's innocent of these quadruple murders. There's a difference in that. And, it's disheartening to the families and to the victims. But this is all I have for you on this first live. Me and the black screen. And if you watch this on a replay, thank you so much for being here. If nobody ever hears it or sees it, might be a good thing. Till we meet again, my friends.